I've spoken about Kate Bush on this channel many a time, many occasion, and the one thing I've not done yet is rank her top 10 best songs. So today that's what we're going to do. These are my favourite Kate Bush songs of all time. I feel like I've said everything I could possibly say about Kate Bush at this point, and I think a million other people out there have done the same as well. But I suppose it's worth saying that she is incredible. Yeah. You heard it here first, no one's ever said that before. Before I get any further into the video though, please check out my Patreon, as you can request videos like this in the future if you support me over on there. You can be part of the Discord server as well, where we're doing lots of March Madness brackets. We're past March, but we're going to keep them going, so they're a lot of fun to do anyway. So please consider supporting me over on there, and then of course you get your own requests in the future for videos like this. So consider that. But yeah, of course, Kate Bush, super iconic artist, super influential artist, a list of artists that she has influenced directly or indirectly, or has been referenced in other artists' music or other artists' interviews over the years, male, female, whatever. It truly is remarkable. Her crossover to all kinds of genres, her appeal, her style, the way that she was the blueprint for so many sounds and styles of music as well of her time. And to this day, it's remarkable. There is no other way to word it, really. Her influence is just too huge to quantify. And yeah, she is special and she's one of a kind, and the music matches that as well. Sometimes an artist can have a lot of influence, but maybe the quality of the music hasn't aged too well, or it sounds dated, or it's not quite as good as it maybe is today, because the way music changes and shifts and sounds change and styles change. But nothing about Kate Bush's music has ever felt dated at all, really. In fact, everything seems eternal. Everything seems like it's going to live on forever. It doesn't matter what year it's going to be, but that stuff from the 70s and 80s will live on to many years and beyond, and will never sound aged, because she just had a way of making music that was truly special. I've spoken at length about all of this in previous videos before. I'm just repeating myself at this point, but of course I do want to shower her in praise before getting into the list, because she obviously deserves it. And perhaps this might be the first video you've seen of me talking about Kate, but if you can, check out my worst to best, where I rank all of her albums from worst to best. So please go click on that as well. I'll leave that in the description so you can check out what my ranking is of her albums too, as well as her songs. But as I do with all of these videos, I'm going to start with some honourable mentions. There's a few tracks. To be honest, I could have gone with like 10 honourable mention, but considering I'm already doing top 10 songs, it would have been a bit extreme to do that. But of course, I always like to give you a few extras to start with, just to show you what could have made the top 10 but didn't quite make it. I think Heads We're Dancing is one of her best songs, I really do. I think it is a bit controversial with the lyrics, but I think what it's trying to do and what it's trying to convey is really clever, with how you think someone can be charming, but you know, looks can deceive and that kind of stuff, and it turns out that they're actually, well, Hitler of all people. Experiment 4 has been one that's grown on me a lot as well. I did include this in the non-album singles list as well that I did not too long ago. There's a bit more of a heavier guitar lead on this track that you don't tend to get in other Kate Bush songs. It really works for her as well. It's a great song. Also, want to mention There Goes a Tenor, which is quite easily the most London sounding song we've ever heard from Kate, and I for one would have preferred more songs from her in her discography that had such a thick Cockney accent, because it is just so fun to hear. And naturally, I'm going to have to include a couple of tracks from Never Forever as well. Violin, The Wedding List, two pretty obvious tracks from that album. Excellent songs. Even if it's not your favourite Kate album, I would be surprised to not at least see you acknowledge that these two tracks are so good, and they demonstrate the quirkiest side of Kate really ever. They're just bonkers tracks really, that have so much going on in them, that again, that experimental side of her has just lived on forever, and there are so many artists that wish they could have songs like this. Those are the honourable mentions. Now let's get into the top 10 best Kate Bush songs, in my opinion, obviously. Good God, Sat in Your Lap is a bit of a manic one, isn't it? The way her vocals are absolutely just terrifying on this song. The notes, the pitches she reaches, the style that she's singing in. What a manic track this is. I don't know how the hell she was able to just do this off the cuff. I mean, it's no surprise really that she didn't really perform live very often, because when you go back to some of these tracks, I mean, later in her life, listening to her try and do this live when she's like in her 50s and 60s, I bet she'd struggle to reach this now, which I think could be contributing to why we don't see her perform live anymore, because these are just one-of-a-kind moments that most artists would never even attempt to do. And if they did attempt to do it, like, it would just sound awful. Like, you could definitely imagine Miley Cyrus trying to do something like this, couldn't you? She tries to be a bit different and edgy at times, and you know what it would sound like if she tried doing it. No one can reach the levels that Kate does. The drums on this track as well are absolutely ferocious. It's so, so good. One of the craziest sides of Kate that you may ever come across. And of course, The Dreaming is filled with songs that are just so outlandish. And they are pulled off remarkably well too. On the complete opposite end of the scale though, you have one of her most somber, relaxing tracks ever, from her most relaxing album ever too, Sunset. A beautiful, beautiful track from Ariel. It has always been one of the tracks that I'm really drawn to, just from an atmospheric perspective as well. You really get lost in the feel of the track. Her vocals are absolutely stunning here. And then of course that nice little sort of like Spanish sounding guitar that comes in later on in the track, which it really adds a nice dynamic to the song, which was already beautiful in its sound anyway, but it just adds that nice little extra layer to it, which I really like. But yeah, it's a very long cut, but you can get really lost in this one because it's just so stunning. I mean, you can totally see the vibe that she's trying to go for here, and you can just absolutely bask in it because it's just a really, really lovely song, and it just ends up being one of my favorites from her ever. Not something you get anywhere else on many of her other albums. This one's quite a surprise inclusion, I will admit. Every time I mention this as being one of her best tracks ever, I get a, really? Are you sure? Is it that good? And I'm like, yes, it is. It is, in my opinion. I feel like this is easily one of her most overlooked songs ever as well, for that reason of the reaction I tend to get when I tell people how good I think this is. It truly is just a really somber and weird little delicate track that is so subdued and doesn't try and do anything out of the ordinary, but there is just such a cool feel to this track. The way the rhythm moves along, the kind of jittery electronic vocals that she throws in towards the end as well, that makes the song just kind of sound like it's glitching in quite an odd way. I mean, think about how music has progressed as well, with a lot more electronic leaning artists doing that kind of modulated vocal stuff and adding in glitches of the vocals. I mean, listening to something like hyperpop as a genre, for example, these days, and just hear the vocals. And, you know, Kate Bush was doing this in like 1980 something, you know, like she was doing this in the 80s, and it's quite impressive to hear and it be pulled off too. It's kind of like something like Kraftwerk would do, but also something like Arthur Russell would do as well, with the kind of like weird rhythm that's going on this track. I just think it's a really, really cool sounding song, and her vocals are just so stunning on it as well. I just think it's such a one-of-a-kind song that it just really takes me by surprise every time I hear it. It truly is nothing else like she's ever done. Speaking of the more quirky side of things though, good God, some of the vocal things that she's doing on this track are just so weird with that. I can't even reach those notes, but good God, it sounds so weird. And again, if anyone else did it, I would probably find it really irritating. It sounds like a cat screeching, but it just works. Every time that Kate manages to pull these things off, it surprises me, but here she is doing it. But yeah, a really fantastic track, really well written in terms of like how It's about wanting something that you really need to work really hard to get and gain that thing. She said in interviews before about how this track is kind of about that feeling and how you're kind of getting like, you know, suspended in Gaffa, where you feel like you can't quite reach it. It's cool. It's a cool song. I think the way it kind of sort of like keeps going back to that refrain of the suspended in, where she says suspended in Gaffa, is really clever as well. It sort of sounds like a song that isn't going to do that, but then it ends up making its way back around to it. And I think that's one of the cool things about the Dreaming. Every track just feels like you don't know exactly where it's going to go, but it manages to take you by surprise in the directions that it goes in. It's a very clever album in that sense, and this, for me, is the best song from it. At number 6 now, and there isn't really much to say about this one other than the fact that it's just a lot of fun. I really find Kite to just be such a delightful track that doesn't take itself too seriously. It feels quite childlike and free-spirited. It's just so much fun and incredibly catchy as well. I do feel like I could pile this into the underrated section of Kate Bush tracks, especially when you look at other tracks that could have been on this list from this album. Moving, the saxophone song Oh To Be In Love, and obviously Wuthering Heights. I guess that's an extra list of honourable mentions there, really. But there's a lot of great tracks on this album, and I think many artists would wish they could have a debut album as good as this, and made it as young as Kate Bush did as well. But with Kite, I just find it to be really fun and enjoyable, and there isn't much to say than that, actually. In the top 5 now, and of course you were probably expecting this track, Babushka from Never Forever, one of her best songs ever in my opinion, and it marries the quirkier side of Kate and the poppier side of Kate. It's an incredibly recognisable, catchy track that has striking qualities to it and also has the extra layer of weirdness and wackiness that you would expect from Kate Bush. But somehow that marriage works so perfectly and has just created one of her best songs ever. There's something so fun about saying Babushka the way she does. It's such an unusual word to say, but goddamn, that chorus comes on every time and I'm ready to say that word once more. It's just such a great track and easily one of her most famous and easily one of her best. That's just what I think. But every time it rains. Number 4 now, and this marks the run of Hounds of Love tracks that are about to come, so get ready for those. But we are starting with Cloudbusting, an absolutely fantastic track, which is easily, for me, one of her best songs ever. I think it has quite easily one of her best melodies ever as well. This melody is sensational. Oh my god. Do 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 do. I absolutely love it. I love it. Every time it comes on, I absolutely love it. And every time it rains, you'll hear in my head. Really, really beautifully written track as well, which is referencing a Steve Reich memoir, I think, which I've read about before. Really interesting. And apparently, because of how successful this song was, they started using like a still image from the music video as the cover of the book. That's how successful this song was and how it really helped gain successful the book itself. Pretty crazy, actually. Again, showing her influence. I mean, she's not just influencing music, she's influencing like books and writers. It's insane, to be honest, man. But anyway, beautiful track. Absolutely fantastic. It's used really well in the film Palm Springs as well, by the way. I know that's got nothing to do with the quality of the track, but I did want to just kind of throw that in there. And yeah, absolutely love it. Adore this one. It's blissful and it's comforting and it's beautifully written. I saw someone say recently that they are a Kate Bush fan and this is nowhere near one of her best songs. Nowhere near? One of her best songs? Nowhere near? Not even like top 20? Not even top 30? or even top 40? Nowhere near. How are we quantifying this? I don't know if they were just trying to get some views on TikTok, because it's pretty easy to do that if you're just a bit controversial when it comes to things like that. But man, I don't care how famous this song is or whatever, this is easily one of her best songs and always will be. Pre-Stranger Things and post-Stranger Things, this is still remaining as one of her best songs ever, and it is one of the best songs ever too. It is a remarkable track. It is fantastic in the way that it's recorded. It has beautiful vocals across the whole thing. The way that it's structured as well, with the verses, the bridge, there are just so many moments on this track that just stick in your head and remain there and will remain there forever. It is truly, truly beautifully written, and of course lyrically it's sensational as well. The idea of how a man and a woman will never fully understand each other because one's a man and one's a woman and they're totally different. So if we could just switch roles and finally figure out what it's like to be with each other and how it feels to be each other and where you're coming from. I think it seems like such a simple concept, but it is done so well in this track, and I just think Kate absolutely nails it. It is a shame for her that she was never actually able to call it the title that she wanted to call it, because it was meant to be I Deal With God, but you know, given the religious connotations, and it was in the 80s, titling a song like that was quite controversial at the time. It's amazing how far we've come though, because these days we're seeing music videos where someone like friggin' strip poles down into hell and gives Satan a lap dance. But back in the 80s, you couldn't even put God in your song title. How crazy is that? This is how times change, honestly. But yeah, absolutely amazing song, and will always be one of her best. Somehow I think there are two better than that track though. At number 2, we have The Big Sky. Good God, this is an amazing track. It is quite easily her most unashamedly, just straight up pop track. It is just from start to end so bloody catchy. It's so relentless. The pace of the song is excellent as well. Her vocals, of course, are just fantastic as they ever are. For the longest time, this was actually my favorite Kate song, would you believe? So this was possibly a few years ago number 1 if I were to do this video back then, but no, it's not anymore. It's been tipped ever so slightly back down to number 2. It's dropped a little bit, but even still, it is just absolutely euphoric from start to end. You just feel so positive when you hear this song. It is just an absolute uplifter of all songs, and for me, again, with quite a few of these other tracks, she's not really ever made anything like this. Like, there's never been anything that's just so bombastically, unashamedly, like, positive in this way. And I feel like there is nothing like this in her discography, and my God, it gets me every goddamn time. It is an absolute spirit lifter of a song. Okay, and here we are at number 1. This is my favourite Kate Bush song of all time. It is Army Dreamers, which perhaps may be a surprise for some people, but I don't get how it could be. This song is truly epic, man. I think the way it is performed, the instrumentation that is used, the way that harp is leading the melody of the entire track, the way it's quite tepid in its pacing as well, but it's got a very patient feel to it, and I just feel like the way she's performing her vocals on this track as well is quite sensational, with the way it's marrying with the instrumentation. She's reaching some really high notes on this track, and I know she's been able to do that across her discography, but it really matches the tone of the track as well perfectly. I just am wowed by this song every time it comes on. It hits a weird place. There's not really anything quite like this in her catalogue. I've said that about 5 songs, to be fair, but yeah, there really isn't anything like this. And not just in how it sounds, but lyrically as well. I mean, this could arguably be her most political song ever, really. I mean, talking about how, you know, young people are dying in war and there's just no future for them, and what they could have been, what a waste of them. it's really quite a powerful message, and I am quite surprised that she made a song like this, to be honest. I mean, again, given the time period of this could have been very controversial for its time. Even would be controversial today, really. But honestly, yeah, just a really powerful track in that sense. And yeah, when you listen to this song and then you play like a Joanna Newsom song immediately after, you've got to listen to that and think, wow, like Joanna Newsom has pulled so much from Kate Bush and this song probably in her entire catalogue. And the influence, like I say, about Kate is just never ending, really. But even if it didn't have that influence, I would still say this song is truly fantastic. And for me, her best song ever. So that's it. That is it. That is my list. That is my top 10 best Kate Bush songs ever, with a few honourable mentions throughout the video as well. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you agree with my picks. If you have a completely different top 10, please comment it in the comments. I want to see what everyone's top 10s are, because I think a lot of people will have very different tracks in their top 10s, which is great. If you like my list, if you agree with me, if you're surprised, any thoughts, let me know. Check out my Patreon, subscribe to the channel if this is the first time you've ever watched a video of mine, and go back and watch previous Kate Bush videos on this channel as well. Thank you as always. Do have a good day. Subscribe, obviously, I've just said that, and goodbye.